It is good to see you, Ruth. I got to hear what you have to say about Kash Patel.
So like the other nominees, we could think of him as totally unqualified. But in fact, if you look at it through an authoritarian lens, all of these people are uniquely qualified to serve an authoritarian presidency. In the case of Patel, who is, QAnon adjacent and just a diehard loyalist, what matters is loyalty to the leader, a willingness to do whatever he wants, but also the destruction of truth, the destruction of procedure, of professional ethics, of adherence to fact-based procedures. All of that has been very important to the FBI and now will be part of the agenda to things to be destroyed, to be replaced by blind belief, zealotry, and whatever the leader says the truth is.
To Ruth's point, Molly, you had our National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, on Meet the Press this morning. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about the Biden administration's efforts to adhere to something close to the rule of law.
The only thing that I can point out, Kristen, is that we, the Biden administration, adhered to the longstanding norm that FBI directors serve out their full terms, because the FBI director is a unique player in the American government system. So that's how we approach things, and we would like to ensure that the FBI remains an independent institution insulated from politics.
That's a big part of this idea of how we self-govern. We have these institutions like the FBI that stand alone. The FBI director, as well as the head of the DOJ, our Attorney General, they're not private, entities for the use of the executive branch or the president. How do you assess that desire against the reality that Ruth laid out, that, we're being set up here with an authoritarian leader who plans to do very authoritarian things with these institutions?
Well, I just want to point out that Christopher Wray is a Trump appointee. And he still has 3 years left on his term. So if second-term Trump wants to get rid of first-term Trump's FBI director, that is a real question. And he will need to be, first of all, he's going to have to get through the rest of the cabinet, and then he can deal with this. It is December 1st, right? None of this happens until Trump is in office, which isn't till late January. Look, I am not an optimist by any stretch of the imagination here. We've seen, optimism has not served us well over the last 6 months. But I do think that it's fair to say that this is a lot. These are a lot of appointments that are going to be hard to swallow, and they can only afford to lose, 3 senators. And I do think that there is, they're going to have to say, are we going to give up advice and consent? Are we going to give up our power so early on in a second Trump term? And they very well may. But, there are a bunch of candidates here that are really not the norm.
Can I follow up on that real quick? Because that's an interesting connection point, Ruth. These U.S. senators, they have power here that they can actually use to support the president of their party, but at the same time preserve the integrity and the dignity of the chamber that they represent by adhering to the constitutional principle, the norm of advise and consent. How does that stack up, given the margins are so tight there that they can't afford to lose 3 or 4 senators in this process, that they do have power here that they could wield? Does history show us where that power, people look at it and go, well, no, I just really want to give it to the authoritarian?
Yeah, she gave you such a sweet, Michael smile for the whole thing.
She does that. That's it.
During the impeachment in 2019, Sherrod Brown wrote an op-ed for the New York Times that was very important to my thinking. I think it's in my book. And he said, in the United States Senate, fear does the business. And we've seen also articles by Gabriel Sherman very recently that powerful people senators, and this is so dispiriting for the American population, are afraid. They're afraid for their physical safety. January 6th was a very useful shock event, sending Republicans as well as Democrats and their staffers running for their lives, calling their families, I don't know if I'll ever see you again. These people are afraid. And so that plus careerism, opportunism, leads people to rarely do the right thing in terms of the norm in a democracy. They have folded more often than not. And that is, it's a learned kind of, I could say learned helplessness or learned compliance. But that's why we haven't seen too many of them speak out.
Can I push back?
Yeah.
And I love you, and you and I are friends. But just to put this, Rick Scott wanted to be the leader of the Senate. And Trump wanted him to be the leader of the Senate, and he's not going to be the leader of the Senate. Now, that was secret ballot, but Matt Gaetz,
they're very brave on secret ballot.
Right, very brave on secret ballot. But Matt Gaetz was told, the reporting from NBC was that there were 20 to 30 senators who were not going to vote for Matt Gaetz.
Right.
So we've already seen that these are not hole-in-ones, that the Senate does have power. Now, are they brave? Maybe not, but
are they brave, and what is their calculus in terms of where they're choosing to use it?
But if you have in a way, it's a strategy. If you nominate someone who is so toxic in so many ways.
But isn't Kash Patel the same?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But having gone through the whole Gaetz thing, maybe he won't make it through. And Hegseth is totally unqualified in so many ways, starting with the tattoos, the private life behavior, talking about insurgencies, completely disqualified to be DOD head. But if you start with these people, even like with Pam Bondi, she's also a Trump loyalist who her ethics are questionable, but she's better than Gaetz. Right. So it's a strategy.
Like the window shifts.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're doing this on purpose, but this is even the new normal, which perhaps senators would accept, is not the old normal.
For either one of you, are these folks that are being leveled up, particularly the lawyers out of Trump world, the ones who were there defending him in all of the trials? And we were just talking with Krista Greenberg about some of that. Are they there as the new guardrail, the protectors, the defenders, the enforcers? That's going to be their role. So they bring an inside pressure, not just on those inside the administration, but those outside of it, like the Senate, for example, that are basically sitting there in fear because of their own personal interest as well as their political interest.
Yeah, and when you have an authoritarian who is invariably corrupt and has had a history of legal problems, shall we say, it's inevitable you're going to surround yourself with lawyers who are also enforcers. And the relationship of most authoritarians with their personal lawyers, for example, a lot of the personal lawyers end up going to jail, but the authoritarian never does. So the more criminal and disruptive you intend to be, the more you want your loyalist lawyers there.
Can I push? I agree, and we're not heading anywhere good. I'm not making the case that things are good. But I just want to look back at Congress for a minute, because in 2016, Trump had huge Republicans, huge margin in the House of Representatives. Huge, whatever, 50 plus. And now they have 2 or 3.
And he keeps taking them. He may not have a majority by the time he's done filling his cabinet.
And Mike Johnson had a terrible time with the last Congress. The 218th Congress was a disaster. They barely passed anything. It was messaging bills. It was the case against the case for gas stoves. I mean, it was just a fiasco. So I'm just saying, yes, for sure, the impulses are authoritarian. Yes, there's a lot to be worried about. But also, these people are not master governors. They do not have the kind of wherewithal that they might need to overthrow the system. Now, that said, they could also do that. I'm not a psychic.